Good afternoon. Today's meeting for the Faculty Senate will now come to order. I'll remind you, we had a revised agenda that was sent on April 4th, and that's the one we'll be using. If you've not done so already, please make sure to check in on the Mobile ID app, Seaboard Mobile ID, and swipe. We were having a little difficulty with it earlier, but it appears to be working at the moment. Okay, so let's go ahead and do a roll call from our regional campuses. Potomac State, how many are present?
Potomac State has 3 present.
Okay, welcome. We can see all 3 of you. And Tech, how many are present?
Tech has 4 senators present.
4 senators. Okay, welcome. So with your participation, we have a quorum for today. And our next agenda item is minutes, and the minutes of the March 5th Faculty Senate meeting have been distributed as an annex to your agenda. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Potomac State, do you have any additions or corrections to the minutes?
No, we do not.
Okay. Tech, do you have any additions or corrections to the minutes?
No, we don't.
Okay. So in that case, the minutes are approved as written. And our next item is report from President Gordon Gee.
Okay, I'm going to wear this damn thing until it gets. There's supposed to be 80 degrees out there, and look at this. So this is my this is my personal protest against the weather. How does that sound? Come and join me. Let's all get mad about it. Okay? How does that sound? So anyway, I'm going to be very short because the provost is going to be long, and she didn't hear that. But 2 things I want to report on. First, and the most important, is the fact that we did get our HLC report back. This is a draft report, the committee report. But the bottom line is that everyone here and all of your colleagues and all of our students performed brilliantly. 4 years ago, it was just when I came 4 years ago, first of all, I had a terrible team. Secondly of all, they couldn't say enough bad things about us. So we had to kind of go through this process. This team was a very good team. They were well prepared. HLC has gone through a significant change. They had a change in presidents, a variety of other things. The bottom line is the fact that this was a much better process. They gave us, they just told us that the institution was doing very well. They gave us no nicks. And they said that we are they thought that we were the institution that was setting the standard for the land-grant institution of the future. I love that comment. So at the right time. Yeah, let's give ourselves a round of applause. No, it was wonderfully positive, and that's something I think we can all take great pride in. I will say to all of you as my colleagues that those hearings, I would just sit in the back and hear people have those conversations about the direction of the institution in its future, about what they were thinking, about the purpose of the place. We have much to celebrate, and I really do congratulate and appreciate that. The second thing I want to say is I've been on the road visiting high schools, and this is the first time that I've done it in this early round, and it's been very interesting. We are doing very well in terms of our admissions process. We want to make certain we get the yield right, and want to make certain also that we get the best and brightest. And so we're really working very hard on that. We've had our Buckley scholars in. We have chosen foundation scholars. We'll be announcing those in the next week, and looking forward to that. Finally, I visited where are you? I visited our Beckley campus. Are you Beckley over there? I can't remember. I visited our tech campus. I hope everyone, sometime we ought to all go down and visit. You've been there, and many people have been there, but it feels like a small, fabulous university campus. It's right in the center of this city. The city is just booming around it. As you know, we expected 1,100 students, 1,200 students. We had to cut it off at 1,750. We're building a residence hall already. We had no expectation of building a residence hall. And I tell this story that I think in my first tenure, I didn't really understand the Appalachian culture, which is as different as a culture. Our people, those in this a place or in many ways where it's different from any other ethnic group, any other Hispanics, blacks, whatever you want to say. And one of the things we discovered about this was the fact that Appalachian families have two characteristics. One is they love their families, and there's a real togetherness with it. The second thing is they didn't want to send their students to be with all you communists in Morgantown, and so so instead we took a university-based education to them. And I think it will prove to be one of the most transformative things we've done for the state of West Virginia, because now the people in the southern part of the state have access to this university in ways that they will never have otherwise, and most importantly, as we know, the opioid crisis and other things, which is a disease of despair and hopelessness. Now there are great rays of hope for these younger people, and I can't tell you how moved I was by seeing all of this. So I thank our folks at West Virginia Tech. I call it the Beckley campus, but I want to thank them for the great work they're doing. And the faculty went through a tremendous a challenge to move a whole campus. Many of them moved their lives. Very difficult. Same with our staff, our students. Very happy, though, a very happy place, and I'm grateful for that. Saying that, what kinds of questions can I answer for anyone? I always feel a little out of sort when I can't talk about the legislature or say bad things about Hep C. You know, it's just awful. I will if you want me to. Any questions? Everyone have a great day. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay, so next is report from Provost Joyce McConnell. By the way, Tech or Potomac State, did either of you have a question for President Gee?
No, sir.
Tech, how was your visit?
The visit was great, and thank you to President Gee for the kind words.
Good afternoon, everyone. I did not wear a scarf, I wore boots. It's my last nod to snow. If I ever have to wear my boots after April 9th, I'll probably kill myself. It just seems wrong, you know, that's all. So Gordon mentioned the wonderful preliminary HLC report, and it is really quite wonderful, and I want to thank all of you in the room who worked on it, came to public meetings, supported Elizabeth Hamilton and her team. There were many people who worked on it. M.A. Pfeiffer is here from the Registrar's Office. Barb Dawson is here she scooped all our data for us. There are many more of you in the room I know who worked on it, but I want to thank you. It was really, this time it was like a symbol of one WVU, the degree of cooperation that we got across the board. So I appreciate that. I have lots of good news to share with you. I'm going to give you a little bit of commentary on the funding formula that's been proposed by the Higher Education Policy Commission. The legislature, about a year ago now, passed a statute that requiring the Higher Education Policy Commission to submit a report on a funding formula. And we heard from them in October to schedule a meeting in November, and we had one presentation by the Higher Education Policy Commission. We didn't receive any data at that time or any other kind of reporting. We asked for a copy of the preliminary report before it went to the Senate and to the House, and we did not receive a copy. So when we appeared before the legislature in January to begin talking with the House and Senate chairs of the education committees, we were surprised to learn that they had not only received copies of the report, but that they had received some financials that were run using the possible model. As it turns out, the possible model is not a good one for WVU, but that's not as important as we believe it is a flawed model overall. It does not recognize the distinct missions of various colleges and does not attend to the full look that we believe a funding formula creation deserves at the whole landscape of higher education in the state and how it would best be funded and what kinds of investments the state wants to make. To give you an example, there was only one conversation, as far as we know, with every president of an institution of higher education in the state before the report was presented. And Gordon said that they worked on it for 2 years in Ohio to get their funding formula correct. So what we have done at this point, it is now open for a 30-day comment period. It opened on March 23rd, which is the day that it was presented at an open meeting of the Higher Education Policy Commission. At that meeting, the person who has been responsible for processing the data promised that anyone could have access to the data, so we have filed a significant data request so that we have more information to know how to respond. But we have also responded prior to that meeting with a preliminary list of the objections that we could see just from the original report. As I said, the comment period started March 23rd. I looked for the final date on the website today. I didn't see it posted, but we know it's coming up soon. And we will be filing a full report, including all of our comments, once we've had an opportunity to look at the data. If we don't get the data in time, we'll still be filing a report. We just won't have the data available before we file the report. I'm happy to meet with people to go over more detail for those of you who are interested in it. But just in case you've been reading about it, the Charleston Gazette did cover it. I wanted you to know the basic outline of where we are on it. Our primary objections, without going into the data, are that it gives us the same amount of credit as other universities who do research, but we do so much more research than other colleges in the state that we're concerned about the weighting. It only really uses student access, student success, and student impact in its measures, which means that all of our service mission as a land-grant university is not being fully credited. The only credit that's being given is our match to the federal or state match, but none of the other work that we do. And the example I like to use, because it's so concrete, is that we do $6 million worth of unfunded dental care every year for those patients who otherwise would get no dental care. Medicaid in West Virginia doesn't cover dental care. Under the current formula, we would get no credit for that contribution to the health and welfare of the citizens of the state. So it's those kinds of issues that we can address even without data. That's just one example of them. But I wanted to give you the update on that. How many of you actually did see that in the Charleston Gazette? Okay, good. So when I'm done my remarks, if you have additional questions, I'll be happy to meet with you. On to some happier things. Gordon mentioned that we had dinner with the Bucklew Scholars, the 20 new scholars coming in, and from those 25 foundation scholars will be chosen. The thing that is really extraordinary about that evening, in addition to hearing the stories of the scholars coming in, are the stories of the 5 foundation scholars that are leaving us and understanding what they have done in their time at WVU. And thank you to all of you who make their experience here so incredibly rich. It is truly an inspirational night, and we're going to have to find a way to record some of these so that you can see them. They're really very deeply moving. In addition, I was just at another ceremony over the weekend, and one of the students who actually was not a foundation scholar came from Philippi, West Virginia, small town Philippi, and studied international studies, and also got a degree in Chinese, and just won a Fulbright to go to Taiwan for two years. And so those are the kinds of successes that I really want all of you to own, and understand the incredible difference that you're making. For next year, you know that we've been doing a campus read every year as a way of unifying our freshman class and then also, hopefully, the rest of the university. So the new campus read for next year is Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel, and probably some of you have already read it. It's another one of the dystopic novels, but it's, which I have to say is a different genre for me. It's supposed to be really excellent. The Campus Read Committee is incredibly excited about it, and the programming has already started around it. I also wanted to mention that we just got notice that our new Center for the Humanities actually got an NEH grant, which is very, very exciting. It's not one of the huge ones yet, but we'll work our way up. And I wanted to mention that because it shows you the value in investing in creating something like a center that promotes that multidisciplinary exchange. The director of the center is Ryan Claycomb, so I want to thank him for getting that grant. We are having our own demo day for those of you who watch Fixer Upper with Joanna and Chip Gaines. They have a demo day where they smash walls. We're having a demo day where our incredibly talented students demonstrate their innovations. And that will be at the Media Lab at Evansdale Crossing. And I might be able to give you the day here, April 19th, if any of you want to stop by. We have Schumann Challenge winners. It's a foreign policy contest for undergraduate students. Garrett Burgess and Morgan King won the European External Action Services 2018 Schumann Challenge, which is a great, great thing. Foundation Outstanding Teachers, let me just let you know who they are quickly. Milena Bernstein, Learning Sciences, Ed Flagg, Physics and Astronomy, Todd Hamrick, Fundamentals of Engineering, David Martinelli, Civil Engineering, Carrie Rischel, Integrated Mental and Behavioral Health, and Dana Volker, Sport and Exercise Physiology. So that's a wonderful, great, diverse list. Glenn Jackson, Professor of Forensic and Investigative Science, has been promoted to the rank of Fellow of the American Academy of Forensic Sciences, one of the highest recognitions for researchers in his discipline. So please reach out to Glenn and congratulate him. Melissa Morris, is Melissa here? One of our senators? No, not able to be, pardon? Newly elected senator, I'm sorry, newly elected senator. She's a teaching associate professor and academic advisor for Fundamentals of Engineering. She's been named a recipient of North Central Section Outstanding Teaching Award from the American Society of Engineering Education. Another great, great honor. Those of you who read your WVU Today will have seen that Karen Diaz, our interim director of libraries, won a very prestigious award as a library senior fellow to go study this summer at UCLA in the fall. So that's a wonderful recognition. How many of you participated in the long-form scholarship celebration? Great. That was a wonderful, wonderful celebration. 60 faculty and 10 staff participated in the long-form celebration, and it was a great evening. We have honors faculty fellows to announce. Thank you for all of you who are participating in the honors program. Sarah Anderson, Learning Sciences and Human Development, Roger Carpenter, School of Nursing, Elizabeth Cohen, Comm Studies, Judge Glock, Economics, Derek Johnson, Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering, Jay Malarker, School of Theater and Dance, and Beth Torin, Interdisciplinary Culture and Film Studies in the WVU Libraries. Ken Means won the 2018 Hebink Award. Leslie Cottrell was named the Cavaney Award recipient. And for those of you who don't know, Leslie is the director of the Center for Excellence in Disabilities in the Health Sciences Center. You here, Leslie? Yay, Leslie. Okay, that's great. So, one other note, many of you saw my email about the posters that were put out by the Appalachian Patriots, which was a white supremacist poster. And I just wanted to thank all of you who responded to my email, both thanking me for the email and thanking for saying what it is rather than dancing around it, and thanking me for the suggestions of what we all might be doing. I believe there's going to be a question about that, and so I'm going to leave the rest of what I have to say about it in the answer to that question. And now I am open to questions, and let me start with our two distance participants, and then I'll come to this audience. That way I won't forget them. So Potomac State, do you have any questions?
No questions for you, Provost McConnell. Thank you, though.
Thank you. How about Tech?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, wonderful. And now we're open for questions here. Oh, did I answer enough? No, I'm sorry. So Roy is doing that because he asked me to mention something and I forgot. So let me tell you about it. Roy, your wonderful representative who was at the March 23rd meeting to hear everything about the funding formula, would like me to mention to you the 5% pay raise that you've been hearing about in the paper and the news. So the 5% pay raise is a 5% pool, not a guaranteed 5% raise for each person. It's based on the average salary of a West Virginia employee. Most of our salaries obviously exceed the average of West Virginia salaries. And so the pool of money that we will receive will be substantially less than what it will cost us to be able to do the RAISE program. Nonetheless, we are working, our Vice President for Strategic Initiatives, Rob Alsop, and our CFO and the Provost's office are all working together to pull together the best raise package that we can do. It will be, so some people will get raises, not everyone will get raises, because it will be based on performance. That's an important thing to keep in mind. Roy, did I answer all those questions? That works fine. Okay, Gordon, is there anything you wanted me to mention otherwise?
Well, yes, there was one thing that I forgot to mention.
We collaborate. Gordon and I collaborate really well. So I'm going to share the mic with him.
Thank you very much. Can you do it? I forgot to wear my. So listen, one of the things that I forgot to say is that Lisa DiBartolomeo
The ACE Fellow.
won the ACE Fellowship, which is, come on, stand up here. Now, for those of you who don't know what the ACE Fellowship is, that it's a fellowship given to a mid-career person who has thoughts about going on into academic administration. I tell people that's too low a standard. As a matter of fact, you should never want to do that. But Lisa has done much for this institution, as you well know, and these are very prestigious, very important. I have had 28 ACE fellows.
Wow.
14 of whom have gone on to be university presidents, and then one is in jail. So what can I say? No, just said it. Good city. So Lisa, congratulations to you. Great.
Lisa, remember, he always wants to make that announcement. It wasn't that I forgot. Okay, you were getting up, Karen, to ask me my question.
Thank you, Karen Kilcassie, Eberly. Thank you for the segue into my question. So I really appreciate your statement in late March, as well as the one in August, recognizing white supremacy across the nation here on campus. A lot of my colleagues, myself as well, are very concerned about this on campus and across the nation. So I was just hoping that maybe you could try two things, maybe just provide a little more details about what the university might be doing in a more material sense, or maybe kind of action items. We appreciate the statements, but without follow-up, they end up being a little bit empty. So we're just curious if there's been some more material things happening. And the other question related, but a little bit different, both the statements were very much couched within recognizing the First Amendment. And we understand that, this is something that you need to be careful of at the university level. But I'm curious why that is. Can we not condemn these actions without also mentioning the First Amendment within that statement?
Well, you could. And the reason I said it that way is because I really, in each of my statements, I have called upon all of you. You are the university, not just me, not just Gordon. We can do some things, we can't do everything. We need you to be out there doing what you can do. And what we want to do is be able to facilitate what you can do. So I talked to Sam Lopez, who is here. Sam has been building a very good program at DEI of outreach to working with faculty, working with committees. His goal is to get a diversity committee at each college so that they connect with Sam in a very tangible way. So that's a goal, and he's been working toward it. I know, Karen, you benefited from that in terms of your social justice committee, but that's not just a one-off. He's doing that as a complete plan throughout the university. Our new vice president for diversity, equity, and inclusion has only been here about 3 or 4 weeks. She's working very actively on these issues. I went to a conference on these issues and on free speech in the fall. She is going to one at the University of Michigan coming up. You ask why it's so important to reinforce free speech, and I don't think that that's a very difficult answer for me. It might be more difficult for others. For me, I have an absolute firm commitment to the First Amendment, as does our president. We believe that if we signal in any way that we do not support free speech, that we will be a place that will shut down the kind of debate and inquiry that we find so valuable. Now, that may be, and Bob Bastris is here who teaches First Amendment, and I know Bob agrees with me on this. For those of us who were on university campuses during a time when speech was chilled for reasons that we held dear, freedom of expression and the First Amendment became very important to preserving what a university is. What we saw was that when you begin to erode the First Amendment, the people who have a marginalized or minority voice are the ones who become the ones who are not able to speak. Now, given any particular time, you may say that's a good thing, right? Because maybe you don't like that speech. But it turns back around, and then your speech could be chilled. And we think it's very important to set a tone for the university that we believe in what a university is. It's a place for powerful ideas. We may not like them. The antidote to speech that you don't like is more speech. The antidote to speech that says things about people that we vehemently disagree with. It's on us to step up and be that counter-narrative. And that's why I say it's not just us, because we're just the leaders of this university. The us is all of us. And that's why in every one of my emails, I try to tell you what it is you can be doing that's affirmative. Now, to speak specifically to the white supremacist posters, which you wanted me to do, we've had extensive follow-up on those posters. Obviously, there is a foundational white supremacist group. We don't know where they are. We don't know how many belong. But we know that there were 2 instances on campus that we knew of, one in the library on a bulletin board and one on a telephone pole. The University Police Department did a thorough investigation, reported back that they did not know of any others, and they did not know of any incidents that arose from that group or those posters. They were assured by the group's leader that the group's leader was not trying to recruit on campus. Now, that doesn't mean that it won't happen here. It doesn't mean it won't happen from another group. So we have to work against that. Now, I know Sam would agree with me on this. We do have instances on campus where people are called things that we stand against, right? They might be called a racist statement or a statement that indicates a prejudice about a particular religion. And we are working very, very hard to help our students understand that there is no place for that here. and that we are an inclusive, inviting, and caring community, and that we embrace diversity. And that means that every time we're hearing a statement like that, it's on us to say something about it. We have to be willing to stand up and talk whenever we hear or see an incident like that. And I call on all of you to do that. We are working with the residence halls to make sure that that's happening in the residence halls. We're working with student life to make sure that it's happening throughout student life. We're working with our student organizations to make sure that our student organizations understand what our values are, because this is a question of values for us as much as anything else. These are values that the hate values we do not share. And so we are adamant about that. Happy to, if you want to expand on your question, I'm happy to answer more.
Well, thank you very much. My comment about the First Amendment, just to elaborate a little bit on it, it was that the statement was couched within that context. And just to make the statement condemning these acts, could that just happen, period, without having to mention First Amendment?
I would be hesitant to do that because I believe that it's very easy to see an erosion of the First Amendment when people feel, and rightfully feel, that some kind of behavior or conduct should be condemned.
All right, thank you.
I'd just like to ask a follow-up question. I agree with everything you've said, Sarah Knox. And usually in an academic situation, you have people expressing opinions either in a talk or something, and we want to, encourage diversity. I've lived in several European countries, all of which have a right to free speech, but they draw the line when it goes to exciting hate against or violence against a minority group. And I don't know if that's what your issue is, but I think somewhere we have to draw a line. I mean, if you look at you see films of Selma in the 1960s where people are yelling and encouraging violence. I wonder where the limit goes or where the boundary goes. Does that make any sense?
Well, it makes a lot of sense to me, and actually where we have seen any indication of violence, we have taken action.
Yeah. Okay.
We have obligations to privacy and confidentiality with both students and faculty and staff. And there, you will have to take my word for it, where there has been any indication of threats and the realistic attempt at violence, the line is conduct versus speech.
Well, right. So, but I mean, with doing it with speech, not threatening somebody's life, but using expletives and trying to get the people around you to be hateful. That's the kind of speech I'm referring to. So, okay.
Well, I would challenge you then, if that's something you're interested in, that you get a group of people together who would explore that concept and come back to Faculty Senate and actually present it. Because there's so many nuances to think about in the recommendation you're making that I don't feel like I'm equipped right now to answer specifically, but I would love to see you have a group that would get together and talk about it and then present what you conclude to this group. And maybe you could get some hardcore free speech people on there and some people who would like to draw the line where you would on the hate speech itself. And that, I think that would be very powerful for this group, and I would really thank you if you did it. Are there any other questions?
Warren Eller from Public Health as well. I like a lot what I've heard you say. That is the antidote to the kind of speech we don't like is more of the kind of speech that we do like. And I guess my question would be, given that formula, which I think is absolutely the correct formula, and given West Virginia's distinct history as being a leader in diversity in this nation, all the way from the first first meetings to actually statehood born out of those kinds of issues, we've got a ton to celebrate. So if we've got these kind of problems emerging, why is it we don't dedicate a lot of funding to bring in national level speakers to really put together a diversity program to celebrate this about West Virginia? And if you need volunteers, I'll actually coordinate all that if you come up with money.
That's great. So I will mention calling upon you all to take these kinds of actions and put these groups together and figure out a path forward is a way you can help us keep administration leaner. Please do. I'm going to stand here, though, in case I have something to say.
Yeah, I know, which is contrary to what I'm going to say. Okay, there we go. But, this is an issue that, I've been dealing with this for 38 years in a variety of forms. We had Milo Yiannopoulos on campus. Let's all remember that. A lot of people wrote me notes and said, you can't let this guy come on campus. When it's about hate speech, they wanted to come on and have people try to exclude them. So what happened? He came on, students talked to him. He said something terrible about one of our faculty members. I exercised my First Amendment rights to say that was stupid, and we disagree with that. But the minute that you start limiting speech on any side, you threaten the nature of a university. Universities are not places to make people feel comfortable. We're a place of ideas, good ideas, bad ideas, interesting ideas, obnoxious ideas. And the minute we start limiting that, and I've lived in Europe for a long time, the European ideas of that are that they limit their speech in ways which I do not think are consistent with their own First Amendment. And so I just think that we as a university need to stand tall on that. So Yiannopoulos goes to the University of California at Berkeley. So the other side of it was that they had people there spewing the most hateful things about what he was going to say, and they burned down the damn campus nearly. So why in hell's sake would we want to be part of that? What is good for the goose is good for the gander. We just simply have to stand tall and say that the First Amendment means what it means. And a university, the minute that we get into any kind of desegregation of that, of the notion of the free speech, we turn from being a university to being a political entity and not really exercising the kind of consistent views that we should have. We are not here to make ourselves comfortable or our students comfortable. We're here to be a place of ideas, and sometimes ideas are really obnoxious and really mean and really irritating, but so what? That's what makes us better, and that's what makes us great. So that's just my view.
So in answer to your question of why don't we bring nationally recognized speakers, we are. Actually, Constitution Day comes fairly early in the fall, sometime in September. Bob, do you remember the day? The 17th of September. So we're looking to bring a national level speaker. We've already made outreach to many speakers, and we will advertise it, and we hope to see you there. But I also encourage different departments, different colleges, bring in speakers. Let's have a year of studying the First Amendment and free expression and the counter with what is hate speech and how should we be dealing with hate speech. Let's have a year devoted to that where we really get it all out on the table and engage with it as a community, faculty, staff, and students. I think that's a great idea. And now one final take on questions from Potomac State or Tech.
No questions, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Matt.
Okay, thank you, Provost McConnell. All right, so I'd like to give some updates and announcements. I normally do announcements last, but I have an announcement that's a good follow-up to the conversation we just had, and in particular, the last question, and that is Diversity Week is coming up. It's not until September 29th. It's September 29th to October 5th. But there's a deadline of April 20th for programming proposals. So, let's kind of keep in mind this last conversation that we just had, maybe put in some proposals for some programming that's anti-hate and embraces diversity. If you're interested in doing that, go to diversity.wvu.edu, or you can talk to Sam Lopez, who's over here, and he can give you more information. Okay, so as far as announcements, does everyone have their iPhone? Or smartphone? Okay, so I'm opening my smartphone and I found the Go365 app, and I've been waiting to do this. I am going to, and you can follow along. You're allowed to do this too. Are you sure you want to delete? Oh, gone. All right, bye. So go. So you've probably seen that Go365 has been terminated, or more specifically, PEIA has terminated its contract. Now, I hope you didn't do that if you have an account and you've been accumulating points. You can still cash in your points that you've accumulated until April 30th. However, I have a fiduciary duty to tell you that any awards that you get are taxable income. Okay, so please be aware of that, okay? Okay, so now you may wonder what's going to go on with Healthy Tomorrows, and as I think we've talked about before, the Healthy Tomorrows program next year, the one that starts in May, this summer, if you were within your ranges last year, you don't have to do the blood work and the biometric screenings, but if you weren't, then you have to do that form again, or else you'll have the higher deductible. And then I'm not sure what they're going to do in the following plan year. That was when Go365 was supposed to be fully rolled out. So I suspect they'll probably just revert back to the old-fashioned paper form once again. Now, speaking of PEIA, you also probably saw that the governor put together a task force, and its charge, this is a quote, is finding a solution for the problems faced by PEIA. Okay, and it turned out to be a rather large committee. WVU does have representation, so Rob Alsop, our VP of Strategic Initiatives, is on the committee. Also, one of our Board of Governors representatives, Marty Becker, is on the committee. So they've already had their first meeting. It was on March 13th down in Charleston. The main thing they did in the first meeting was they split into 3 subcommittees on the topics of coverage and plan, cost and revenue, and public outreach. And I'm pleased to report that Rob Alsop will be chairing the coverage and plan subcommittee. And their next meeting is tomorrow, and they'll get a presentation from Ted Cheatham on how PEI works. And also our own Senator Sean Tu, he'll be presenting a presentation on coverage and plan to the committee fairly soon. Now, while we're talking about PEIA, I'd like to point out to you that open benefits period has started on April 2nd, and it will continue through May 15th. And I would recommend that you use the current freeze on PEIA as an opportunity to reevaluate your own plan. Because if you're like me, you are probably foolishly in Plan A, and it's probably a choice you made way back when, where you just picked it because it was the highest priced one, and you just assumed that it was the best plan. Well, you, at a minimum, should look at Plan B, okay? And the reason why, now Plan B has a lower premium and a higher deductible. If you do the math, the increase in deductible is actually lower than the savings in premium, okay? So it's kind of a no-brainer to switch at least from A to B. Now, if you want to go beyond that, if you make more than $75,000, that would be your 9-month salary, base salary, then you really should consider Plan C. And the main reason is that Plan C is not income-based, and $75K is the crossover where it becomes cheaper than Plan B. Now, it does have a high deductible, and you need to couple it with a health savings account, which sounds complicated. It is a little complicated, but health saving accounts are pretty nice because they're tax deductible, and the amount that you have in it rolls over from year to year. It's actually a lot like an IRA in that sense. So if you are in Plan A, please go to the health fair, talk to a benefits coordinator, read the brochure that you get, and consider switching. It could save you several $1,000s. I think in my case it may save me $3,000 or something like that, and you may be in a similar boat. Okay, now, other thing I wanted to report back on, update on the Dependent Education Scholarship. So the university has finally disclosed, or they've unveiled the full details of the program. So the key highlights of the scholarship program you get a fixed amount for each dependent, $1,650 per year if you're in-state or your kid's in-state, and that would be for up to 4 years, and renewable annually. If you're out of state, then you get the difference between in-state and out-of-state tuition. So effectively, if you work for WVU but you live out of state, your children can come here for an in-state tuition. Okay. Now, like any scholarship, your total scholarships can't exceed the total cost of attendance. And it also can't be coupled by certain other WVU benefits, like there's a WVU medicine benefit that you can't combine it with. There are some other requirements. You have to be under 26 and maintain a 2.75 GPA. There's no minimum service required, and it's going to start in the fall of 18. Deadline is May 1st for the first year, and after that, the deadline is February 1st every year. So if you want more information, go to talentandculture.wvu.edu, click on Wellness and Perks, and below that, you'll find Dependent Education Scholarship. Okay. Another update is on Board of Governor rules. I sent an email actually on March 13th to the entire faculty right before spring break, asking you to spend part of your spring break looking at the new proposed rules, faculty rules, and certain academic rules. The faculty rules comment period expired on March 20th. We did get a handful of comments, I think on the order like 7, 10, something like that, and they've been addressed either through responses to the comments or revisions to the rules. Tomorrow, the revised rules will be posted for the faculty rules, and they'll be considered at the April 20th Board of Governor meeting. So if you're interested, if you made a comment and you want to see if it's been handled, you might want to go and look for the revisions tomorrow. And then there's another set of rules. It was academic rules. The other rules were the faculty rules. These were the academic rules, as well as the last of the faculty rules, which is on reduction in force, or the RIF rule, Rule 4.7. Those had a public comment period that went through April 5th. That public comment period has actually been extended to April 11th, so there's still a little bit of time left if you still want to squeeze in another comment. So those comment period will close, and then it actually, because the comment period was extended, it won't be considered until the June Board of Governor meeting, unless there's a special meeting in May. Okay, so that was the update. So got the update on PEIA, Dependent Education Scholarship Program, and the BOG rules. Are there any questions about those items or anything that I might have forgotten? Okay. Potomac State, did you have any questions?
No, sir, we do not. Thank you.
Okay, TAC, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, thanks. All right, so then I'll move on to our next agenda item. This is, the agenda item says GPA weighting scale incorporating plus minus grades, Annex 1D. This was actually something that was put in the revised agenda based on deliberations made at executive committee. I need to kind of give a little background here. Now, if you've been on the Senate last year, you probably remember this. If you're a new senator, maybe not. But if we go back a year in time, actually go back to the beginning of the last academic year. So now we're in fall of 16, okay? At the request of students, we formed an ad hoc committee comprised of faculty and students to explore the issue of plus-minus grading and what to do about it. So there's a problem, and it exists even now, and that is, okay, we're allowed to give plus-minus grades, right? But the plus-minus grades are not factored into GPA calculations. So you give an A-, it still counts as a 4.0. And this has caused some issues. For instance, if a student applies for a graduate school, they had all A's and a few A-, they think they have a 4.0. Some graduate schools, certainly graduate programs, will tend to recalculate GPAs on their own scale, thereby weighting the minus grade, and then they might find out, oh, they didn't actually have a 4.0, they had a 3.9, and they didn't have the GPA they thought when they applied to the grad school. So we formed a working committee, got lots of input from students, and deliberated throughout the whole academic year, and came back to exec and basically said, well, if we are to continue using plus-minus grades, we need to weight them, okay? And based on that, exec endorsed this, and then a vote went out to Senate. And we're presented with two options. Basically, option one, we will continue to assign plus-minus grades, but they'll be weighted according to a scale that would be determined by this body, or we would just turn off plus-minus grades altogether. So an A would be 4, B would be 3. You couldn't even assign plus-minus grades. Those were the two options that went out to a vote. The vote concluded a year ago today, and it passed by a margin of 2-1 in favor of taking into account plus-minus grades, okay? Now, that left us with the next step, which is we had to come up with plus-minus grade scale. And we basically had, the timeline is we had a year to do it. And with my apologies for not getting on this a little earlier, our year is now up. We need to put language in the next catalog providing some prior notice about the new grading scale that we are going to decide to use. And So the issue now then becomes, okay, well, what weighting scale do we want to use, okay? So we formed another working committee that deliberated on weighting scales. We looked at some scales that were used by our peers, and the one that was brought before exec, there's actually two options that came out of the committee and that was given to exec. One option was a 0.3 increment, so an A minus would be 3.7, and a B plus would be 3.3, for instance. And the reason being that that's the one that's most commonly used by our peers. And then another one was an increment of 0.25. The rationale there being that, well, as I just mentioned, certain scholarships, first-year promise, dependent scholarship, has a cutoff at 2.75. So you get a 2.75 if you got all B minuses. Okay? So this went out to a vote at exec, which just concluded, and it was overwhelmingly in favor of the scale with a 0.3 increment. And that's the one that is in your agenda as Annex 1D. I'll point out a couple additional features. One is A plus is weighted at 4.3. That was a conscious decision. A lot of other schools cap the scale at 4. We didn't really want to have 4.3 because then it would become a 4.3 scale instead of a 4.0 scale, and there would be kind of pressure to give A pluses. And so we did limit it at 4. But other than that, you can see the 0.3 increment. We did have one request for an F minus, which would be negative 0.3. Sorry, Dave, we couldn't add it in there. That was at the request of next year's chair. So that's the scale that we have. Okay. So now, in terms of rollout, the game plan, as mentioned in the annex, is to roll this out fall 2021. So we've got 3 years. And what will happen is when this fall 2021 hits, all grades that are brought in effective that semester will be scaled according to this table, okay? So it won't be retroactive. If whatever your GPA is going into fall 2021, it won't be recalculated. Starting fall 2021, any new grades that you then get would be scaled according to this. So there'll be a certain time where, anything that came in before fall 2021, you get an A minus, it'll still be counted as a 4. Once you hit fall 2021, your A minus would now be a 3.7. Okay, and so what's pressing this issue right now is, well, catalog goes to rest in about a month, and we just need to decide on the scale so we can put it in the catalog and have sufficient prior notice that this could go live in fall 2021, and we feel like we've offered enough prior notification, okay? So that's where we stand now. Now, when we were discussing this at exec and when I've discussed this with students, the discussion sort of sidetracked a little into, oh, wait, do we really want to have plus minus grades to begin with, okay? And some students feel that, well, if you're a straight A student now, you might not get a 4.0 if you have a single A minus. It may affect promise scholarships. These are all discussions that we had a year ago, but it was with slightly different Senate, significantly different students, and so some of the same issues are coming up. I will remind you that it was not unanimous. It was about a third wanted to drop plus minus altogether, 2/3 wanted the flexibility to allow faculty to give plus minus grades if they so choose. Okay, so that issue still exists even as we move forward with this. I've talked with the new student body president, Isaac Obiyama, and he also has some concerns. But I'll remind you that our present task is just to decide what scale are we going to use should we move forward with this. Okay, so come fall 2021, if we still give plus minuses fall 2021, how are they going to be scored? Okay. Now, that said, it's not too late between now and 2021 for us to just stop giving plus minus grades altogether. Okay. Now, you could do this on an individual basis. If you object and you want to be a conscientious objector here, just don't give plus minuses. That's fine. Some units might decide to recommend that their faculty don't give plus minuses. But, as a body, the faculty as a whole may decide, okay, we want to just remove the ability for faculty to award plus minus grades, okay? And if that's what you want to do, you can do it, and you don't have to make that decision now. Because the fact is, if we pass this scale today, it'll still be valid in 2021, and A minus will still be 3.7. It's just that maybe you may have made a decision between now and then not to give A minuses. Okay, so I just want to point that out because I don't want you to think that you're voting on something other than what you're voting on. What you'd be voting on now is simply the scale. and then we do have time. I would actually recommend that maybe we put together another working group next year just to decide, okay, do we really want to go forward with this or not? Okay. Also, I should point out to you one other detail. Law, Crazy Law College, they have their own scale that actually looks a lot like the one that you have in front of you, except they actually do, in fact, weight A pluses as a 4.3. However, in the case of law, it's probably acceptable to do that because they also currently have a curve that places a quota on the number of A's, and so the A pluses are very rare in the College of Law. But if we don't have a quota in the greater university and we have a 4.3 for A pluses, who knows what would happen. Okay, so I did want to point that out, and it is mentioned in the document. Okay, so with that in mind, we do have a motion. It came from exec. It's actually a recommendation from exec, so it doesn't need a motion, right? Okay. But I am willing to take questions. If there's questions or points of discussions, please do bring them up. Yes.
Scott Fleming, College of B&E. I think on the positive side, there were some faculty that were actually looking at the agenda beforehand, and we got phone calls as senators. And so I think there's a misconception as to what we were actually voting on today, because a lot of the same things that you said that had popped up before in the past had popped up. Everything from the students are going to wheedle us for grades, what do we do about similar sections, and the equality of one professor not giving A pluses or A minuses versus somebody who does, and then of course the F minus, or also known as the G or H that they want to award, that popped up too. So I just wanted to point that out. I told the individual faculty members that I would go ahead and make mention of these comments to the faculty body.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. And bringing discussing it presently has brought up this whole discussion that we had previously, and a lot of the drawbacks that may be associated with this. Any other questions or comments? Potomac State, did you have questions or comments?
We do not have any questions, sir. Thank you.
Okay. And Tech, did you have any questions or comments?
Yes, one quick question. We currently don't have the option to award pluses and minuses, so we're wondering if that change in 2021 would affect us.
Okay, that's interesting. I did not realize that. Is that right, Amay? Tech, they don't? Okay. Well, I mean, we probably could turn it on for you at some point before then if you so choose, but, Oh, yeah. Okay, Amay's looking at me. She looks like she's going to shoot me. I'm glad Campus Carry did not pass. Okay. Okay. But yeah, and, we'll have to see what the deal is in 2021 because they're actually, maybe we decide to turn off plus minus grades before then, possibly. But yeah, I think that's something that could be done. It's a good point. Thanks. Okay. Any other questions from the floor? Points of comment? Okay. All right. Well, then, if you don't mind, I'll go ahead and call the vote since we didn't need a motion. All those in favor of the grading scale Annex 1D, please say aye. Aye. Okay. Opposed? Okay. Potomac State, how do you vote?
3 ayes.
Okay. Tech, how do you vote?
Tech has 4 ayes.
Okay. Great. Well, with that, the grading scale passes. Okay, so next up, we have, we did another culture survey. We're calling this the second annual cultural survey, so I guess we'll be having another one soon as well. And Chris DeBoard, I'll give you a little context here. There was a series of campus conversations, and I attended one. I saw a few of you there. It was actually quite nicely done, and this is kind of a reduced version of that campus conversation that kind of gives the results of the culture survey. Okay, so Chris.
Okay, well, thank you, Matt, and good afternoon, everybody. We did a campus conversation where the same set of slides that we're going to go through here, we took over an hour and then had good Q&A at the back end of it. Matt told me I had 10 to 15 minutes today. So I don't want it to feel like I'm zipping through the slides, but I'll just give you that qualifier that I'm going to move through them pretty briskly. However, those campus conversations are taped, so if you want to watch the long version, you can go out to Bureaucracy Busters and you can find the link, and you're welcome to just do that as a reference. But one of the things I wanted to talk about, what we thought was really important, is to explain the why. You know, why are we doing this? Why are we spending time on this? What's it all about? And it relates back to our land grant mission. You'll hear Gordon really starting to talk about this in terms of the power of purpose. Why a lot of us are here, the majority of us are here, is that we want to make a difference in the state, whether it's education, healthcare, or prosperity. That's really the big thing that drives why you would pick WVU and why you would want to be here at this institution and doing the work that we're all doing. And this culture survey is really geared around, if you have a really strong, powerful culture, it accelerates your efforts at trying to achieve that mission. If you have a culture that has challenges, it slows you down, it can hamper that, it can get in the way of accomplishing that mission. And so what we're really trying to do is purposefully shape this culture, understand what are the things we're good at, what are our strengths, what are those things that really accelerate our ability to deliver on our mission, and then where are the opportunities, where are there things that we could start to think about, how could we change those, how could we shape them over the long term to make the university even more effective in what we're trying to accomplish. And so, a couple things to point out. One is, and I think you all know this intuitively, but culture is a long game. This is not something that, we'll do one survey, we'll talk about it, and then, hey, everything's great and we're moving forward. This is years in the making. It's going to take us a long time on any of these items that we choose to try to shape to actually make a difference around, changing behaviors and changing our perspective. And then the other thing, and again, really unique challenge when it gets to faculty, because you have to ask yourself, who do you work for, right? If you look at who you would consider to be your leader, that's a little blurred on the faculty side of the equation. Some people might say it's the chair, some people might say it's the dean, some people might say it's neither of those. And so it's a little more difficult from a leverage standpoint. But with that being said, here's how I'd ask you to think about changing culture or levers around how we move the culture. We like to think it's about an 80-20 proposition. So 20% is what we do as a system. What are the things we can do around things like, how do we address in the wage package coming up, how are we going to try to wade into some of the compression and inversion issues that we face? What kind of things do we do around, Matt referenced Go 365. How do we respond to PEIA and a more competitive benefits offering for everybody here? That would be in that bucket of the 20, the system kind of things. But if you think of Google as an example, if we all worked at Google right now from a culture standpoint, what they do around that system, we'd have food within arm's reach. It'd be right out in the hallway. There'd probably be somebody rolling sushi for us right now if we were having this meeting. If you didn't want to take the steps, you could take the sliding board. If you wanted to take a bicycle ride this afternoon, it would be waiting for you. If you had a child, they'd be at daycare here on campus. If you had dry cleaning, it would be waiting for you in your office. All those things around a system, they do exceptionally well. They have tremendous resources, but people still quit. Why would you leave that kind of culture, that kind of system? Why do people leave Google? And that's where the 80 comes in. Whoever is your leader, who you attend to as your leader, they have a bigger impact on the culture you work in than anything we can do from a system standpoint. And that's why Google still loses talent. People decide to opt out because if you're the leader you work for is a jerk, day in and day out, that gets tiring, that gets difficult, and people wind up leaving. And so when we think about how we're going to move the culture here, we're thinking about it in that backdrop of it's about an 80-20 mix. There are things we need to do around the system, but we can't do, it's not 100 around the system. We have to focus on leadership. We have to focus on the quality of leaders we have here, the message around what we expect leaders to, how we expect them to show up every day. It's a huge lever around culture. And so that's one of the things you'll see us begin to focus on. But just in terms of really quick, high level in the interest of time, we did a survey in 2016. This was our first step of dipping the toe in the water to see, okay, if we're going to try to shape the culture, the first thing you have to do is try to measure it, put some boundaries around it, and understand what are our strengths, what are our opportunities. And so we did a random sample of 2,000 folks. On the university side of the house, we have between 7,000 and 8,000 benefits eligible faculty and staff, and so we had 2,000 out of that, between 7,000 and 8,000. We got a little over a 50% response rate. And the encouraging thing, when you look at our strengths, these are things that if you were trying to develop these, they're really, really hard to develop. And we're fortunate that they're strengths. So the first one was sense of pride. That is our number one strength as an institution around our culture. People have a real powerful sense of pride around both the state and the institution, the impact that we make in the state. Student centricity is the second one. We are all student focused. We get that. That's why we're here. And that's shown up both in 2016 and 2017. Those are the top two strengths in both surveys. And then in 2016, people are fun to be around. We enjoy our coworkers. We enjoy the environment. That was our third biggest strength, which again, if that wasn't the case, those things are really hard to build. So it's a great foundation in terms of strengths. Where we saw opportunities, empowerment, what we heard really from folks was that, it's very much a top-down culture. There's a lot of folks that won't let go, that won't delegate, that need to be involved in things they really shouldn't be involved in. That holds us back. Coaching and feedback. We heard quite a bit that we haven't done a lot around coaching and feedback. And if you think about what we've done around leader development, we've not done a lot around leadership development. These are leader behaviors. These are things that are teachable, but we haven't invested a lot over the last couple of decades in developing and growing those skill sets. And then appreciation and recognition was another one where we heard that was an opportunity. So that was 2016. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on how we responded. All I'm going to say here is, again, if you think that 80-20 perspective, this is the 20 behind that. But if you want more detail on any of this, we can either, during Q&A, we can talk about some of these, or you can feel free to watch the long version of the campus conversation. But 2017, what we decided was, after we went through this experience in 2016, we learned from it. We're like, you know what, this works for us. It's a good start. This is going to help us try to figure out how we want to measure the culture and start to take action. So in 2017, we then sent the invite out to all benefits eligible faculty and staff, so between 7,000 and 8,000 folks. We got a 54% response rate. One of the things I want to make sure that everybody in the room understands, because we heard some of this last fall, that there were concerns around, what are you going to do with my individual results, right? And so making sure everybody hears this loud and clear, we don't care about individual results. That's why we did this in terms of setting it up with an outside vendor. We don't get that data. We don't want that data. We're concerned about the numbers in the aggregate and where that's moving us in terms of the university. What are our strengths? Where are our opportunities? We are able to do reporting by leaders in terms of, you think deans or VPs of large units, we want to be able to do that. But beyond that, we're not planning to track this down to the individual level. We don't want individual information. So I know there were some conspiracy theorists out there in that population that thought, okay, this is it. This is how they're going to get you. This is absolutely not the case. It's not the secret police, and it really encourage you going forward. Because the other thing that's really important to understand about this, it's not an attitude survey. So this is not gauged to, are you happy and loving it, or are you upset and angry? That's not what this is measuring. This is around cultural behaviors, and to what degree do you see certain cultural behaviors being demonstrated. And so if you have a real negative opinion on that, that's great, because it's helping us identify where are the opportunities, where are things we need to try to change. So be honest. Feel free to take that survey when we do it in the fall. What we hope to do is do this yearly and then start to use it as a measuring stick. And again, knowing, though, this is a long-term change process, so we're not going to see huge changes year over year, but you will see some changes, and it starts to give us an indicator of how well we're doing. And I'll show you a little bit about that. This first, though, just to kind of talk through, these are all those cultural behaviors that the survey measures, and you'll see a lot of red up here on the sheet. So let me just qualify that a little, and I'll tell you, you all are survey experts. I am not. So this is the limit of my knowledge on surveys, is about what you're going to hear. If you have any questions further than that, I promise I will disappoint you with my answer. But this was a 7-point Likert scale. And so if you answered strongly agree, that would be green. That is the only thing that can generate a green. So that would be a 7 out of that 7-point Likert scale. So the odds that this sheet's ever going to be all green, probably not that high. We'd love to eventually see a couple of green elements on there, would be awesome. but don't feel like, oh my gosh, there's no green, this is a problem. The yellow basically indicates I agree. So I agree that I see, whether it's I somewhat agree or yes, I agree, to seeing some of those cultural behaviors. And that's where we start to, again, the value in this is identifying where are the real opportunities that we can leverage as strengths and where are the opportunities we need to try to focus on collectively around our culture's opportunities. And then the red is anything else. So anything that would have been rated a 4 or below on that Likert scale, which is basically means I disagree, right? So what's important to see here is in 2017, what stayed the same, sense of pride and student focused, still stayed the same as strengths. High expectations for performance nudged out fun coworkers as that third strength. And when you look at high expectations for performance and you think of what happened in 2017, we did a lot around the freedom agenda. We really elevated the role of what does performance mean here, what are the consequences around performance. And so it's not a surprise to see that in there, but it is, this is where we're going to see year to year when there are shifts in this culture, how will it start to show up in this instrument? And then when you look at the bottom, the three opportunities, coaching and feedback, appreciation and recognition. Again, if we've not been doing a lot of training for a lot of years, and out of that population of 7,000 to 8,000 folks, we have roughly 1,100 or so people leaders. It's going to take us a while to move the needle there, right? So coaching and feedback and appreciation and recognition, we want to make strides, but there's a lot of work to do there around the right leader behaviors. But what did creep in was high performance is recognized and rewarded. So that nudged out empowerment as our third greatest opportunity. And what's really, it was interesting to us as we've done this data 2 years in a row now, the top three and the bottom three are pretty much the same regardless of what unit you're in. And we didn't expect that. That's why we did cuts by unit. We expected some units, again, depending on the leaders and the challenges may be different, but really powerful to see the patterns are the same everywhere you go. Now, the degree of red, the degree of yellow might be a little different in terms of somebody saying I strongly disagree versus I disagree, but for the most part, it's the same three strengths and the same three opportunities. And then the other thing that's interesting, we did cuts on both faculty and then anyone who wasn't faculty, thinking there may be different issues there. And again, no differences in terms of top three and bottom three. Again, degrees of, yes, but what are the top three, bottom three opportunities are pretty much the same across that population. So that was really interesting to us. What we heard on high performance is recognized and rewarded. What people were saying there is, hey, it's great that we're finally tuned in on performance, because if I'm working hard, I want that to be important. I don't want to have to carry a coworker who's not performing. However, you really need to take a look. You're not putting your money where your mouth is. Our reward structure isn't aligned around those top performers. When we do things like have merit increases, the top performers can't get the same increase as the average performers. In a lot of cases, they do. We also have issues around compression and inversion, where it's like if you don't start to address that and take that issue off the table, it's really hard to be credible saying that you're trying to move this forward. And that drove a lot of our decision-making around the money that we did have to invest, where we spent that around the 2018 wage increase. We're still working through how that 2019 increase would be designed, but that's in the back of our mind as we go through this, is we've got roughly, when you look at compression and inversion, it's about an $18 million problem to fix. And we put 4.5 out of 6 million towards it last year, and every year we intend to, over the next 5 years, try to address that and eventually close that gap. But that's what we picked up in terms of the big picture. And so really, just one other thing I think I want to highlight before we get off of this and then just go to Q&A in the interest of time is some of you might be saying, it's the first time I've ever seen this information. I never saw 2016. It's the first time I saw 2017. And what's up with that? What's that all about? And so I want you to understand that was done on purpose. But I also want to be fair to our senior leaders in how I describe that. But when you look at driving culture change, I talked about that 80-20. It really rests with the leader. The leader needs to be up front in carrying this message and trying to drive the change. And so the first year we did this, We put together the information, and we were purposeful around the fact that I wasn't going to come out and talk about it. Gordon wasn't going to come out and talk about it, because we didn't want it to be a Stewart Hall program. We didn't want it to be a talent and culture program, because it's all of us. It's, that's 7,000 to 8,000 people. We make the culture. It's not one person that really makes that culture. And so we really did that to try to push our leaders out front. The first time through, roughly a quarter of our leaders got it and moved in that direction. Again, to think, it's a long game. We're trying to change behavior. This is new for a lot of people, right? So it was actually better than I expected in terms of the first year. This year, all of our senior leaders now have a profile in terms of how their individual units look, but we did not give folks very strong guidance. We didn't say, hey, you need to, by X date, communicate this with your team, because again, we're trying to push people into new spaces and get them to learn new behaviors, new habits. So some of our leaders are really wrestling with this right now in terms of, okay, I have my results, what do I do? How do I work with my faculty to make a change in this in my school? Or how do I work with the staff in my unit? What do I do to try to impact these results? And we're working with them, but again, we're growing each leader at a different pace in terms of we're meeting them where they're at and what they're able to do. So if you haven't seen this, it doesn't mean your dean's been sitting on it. What it does mean is that at some point in time, your dean might be thinking about sharing this, and they just haven't figured out exactly how yet, or they might be waiting for when they're going to have the group of you together. It might be this fall, where they do sharing of the overall results and kind of talking through it. But just understand, it's new behavior for all of us. This is new stuff. And taking something like this and just going back to a sheet like that, if I give that to you as a leader and you say, okay, well, what do I do with this? Where do I go? How do I impact it? And the challenge I would give to all of you, though, is understand it's not just the leader. This is incumbent on all of us. If we want to make the change, it's going to accelerate faster if we all start thinking about we all shape this culture. But what we're going to try to do in that backdrop around the 20 is bring more resources, more training and development for the folks that are in leadership roles to kind of help them move this forward quicker. So with that, I'll open it up to questions. So I'll start Potomac State. Any questions?
No, sir. That was pretty thorough. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks. And Tech, any questions?
One question, was this analyzed differently across campuses?
So can you give me a little more in terms of your question? When you say analyze differently across campuses, do you mean do we have results just for Tech and just for Potomac State?
Was the data collapsed
So
across campuses?
we've rolled up, we have an aggregate for WVU, which is what I shared, but then we have individual results for WVU Tech, and we have individual results for Potomac State. So Carolyn has the results for Tech, and Jennifer has them for Potomac State. Is that the question, though, you were asking? I just want to make sure I'm answering your question.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. And then anybody in the room, any questions?
Dave Hauser, Eberly. I went to the downtown campus conversation, and I believe at that one you said you were going to post the full report on the Bureaucracy Busters site. I've been looking for it. It hasn't appeared there yet.
It's not there?
Nope.
Oh,
At least
okay.
I can't find it, but that may be on me.
Yeah, I'll follow back up and make sure it's out there.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then just as a follow-up, with a 7-point Likert scale, you're collapsing neutral and all categories of negative to all negative?
That's my understanding from our vendor, yes. So anything that's rated a 4 or below would show up in red.
That's an odd decision.
Yeah, and the only thing I tell you there, like I said, I'm not trained in surveys, so I can't really debate that one with you because
And do you have the data or they have the data?
they have the data.
So you can't reanalyze it?
No. We specifically, I do not want the data because from a confidentiality standpoint, I want to make sure people understand, because we've had also people have asked, why aren't we doing this in-house at WVU? We specifically don't want to own it. We don't want to get anywhere around where people can say, aha, I knew it. You have the data and this is what you've done with it.
Okay.
Okay.
Nick Bowman, Comm Studies. I just had a similar question, very simple one. The themes that you're breaking down, A lot of them are very similar, and I might ask you to ask the vendor the extent to which those things aren't just highly indicative of the same underlying concept. The reason I mention that is because in the presentations, if you're going to be presenting like these are the top 3 highest rated dimensions of culture that are high and low, it could be the case that actually 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 of those are all correlated and represent some underlying construct like openness, for example. And if they're not providing you that data, it could be useful when you're presenting it, especially if we're talking about shifts and change over time, because we might just take one of those items, but it could actually be the case that when one moves, 7 of them all move in the same direction. So I know you don't have that data, and I'm glad you asked that question, but I might encourage you to ask the vendor if they had considered that opportunity for the analysis.
Yeah, no, and we've heard that actually. We've had discussions around trying to take one thing and say, okay, this one thing is it, versus the fact that a lot of these move together. A lot of these are tied together. Like when you see the opportunities, they're leader behaviors. And if we select better leaders, develop better leaders, set expectations more clearly around leadership, we're going to move more than one. But what we were trying to do is also, if you think about it, we really haven't tried to consciously shape our culture before. So trying to get leaders now to even begin to act and say, okay, well, what am I going to do differently? Because what it's ultimately going to take is if we want the results to look different, in particular, leaders have to show up differently. And so it might not be the perfect instrument. There may be, I look at this and I think in roughly 5 to 7 years, we outgrow this, and we have to get to a much more thorough, in-depth tool. We're just not ready for it yet. But anything right now that causes leaders to show up differently, behave differently, move in a positive direction is way better than where we were 2 years ago. So that's sort of the thought behind it too, because I know it's not an incredibly sophisticated tool, but you have to kind of start with what you're ready for.
So this survey was conducted on the heels of a coach assessment, which you're probably familiar with, that has a lot of overlap with this survey, but it got down a little more deeply into some of the mechanisms. And what that survey reflected was a response to some of the, what I'll call, for lack of a better word, some of the austerity measures that have been rolled out in the last few years. And in addition, not keeping pace with inflation, with our salaries and so on. So a lot of it was fiscal. And so my question is, just because I enjoy a good irony, how much does it cost to roll out something like this?
And that's a great question. That's also why we went with this vendor and this tool. In-house, we had folks saying, why can't we do this in-house? We could do this in-house much cheaper than you're doing it. And we're like, okay, what could you do it for? And the lowest number we got was $65,000. The first year that we did it, when we did the sample, was $7,000. And this year, with the extended cuts, it's under $30,000. And so it's one of those where if we never take a look in the mirror, we're not going to improve. You have to have feedback. You have to kind of see where you are in order to challenge people to behave differently, to show up differently, and to lead differently. But what we're trying to do is avoid this becoming a huge drain on resources for an organization our size. A more sophisticated instrument, yeah, I've seen these be $80,000 to $100,000. What we're getting is a lot of bang for our buck in terms of the money we are spending, because we're not spending a lot of value or a lot of money to get people moving. When you look at 1,100 leaders, when we put this up, is it my slide back on the screen? When we put that up, the degree of red on that sheet has been an eye-opener. And there's a number of leaders that, when you look at, if we don't do that, if we don't open those eyes, what do we continue to waste? What does that red cost us every day? The small investment we've made for the number of senior leaders that we've woken up has been well worth the investment, in our opinion. Any others? Okay, thank you. Matt, thanks.
Thanks for coming out to see us.
Thank you.
Okay, so our next speaker is Lindsay Reinhardt, who's from Academic Service Learning, Center for Service and Learning. Thanks.
Hi, everybody. So I am the Academic Service Learning Coordinator housed in the Center for Service and Learning, and I just wanted to talk with you a little bit today about academic community engagement. and what WVU is doing and how we can support what you are doing. So first, kudos to all of us because we are one of only 49 public universities that has received both the R1 and community engagement Carnegie classifications. So great. That being said, our engagement is really attached to our research and scholarship. And so I just wanted to talk about a few ways that we can support the work that all of you are doing, resources that we have for these types of engagement. So we'll talk about S-designated courses, how we measure and report on university engagement, some resources that we have available, and what I really want to work towards is doing a better job to foster some interdisciplinary communities of practice for faculty that are engaging with the community. So quickly, our S-designated courses, the university decided several years ago to better be able to see when we are offering opportunities for our students to engage in the community through the classroom to have the designation so that this is easy to track. So courses can receive a formal service designation. We have information on our website what the criteria are. At this point, the criteria are pretty low. We wanted to really get a benchmark. And so if your students are engaging in the community, if there is an opportunity for them to be doing reciprocal service that is based on real community needs, we want to make sure that give and take is going both ways. And then an opportunity for them to come back to the classroom and dive in a little bit deeper about what they've learned in the community so that we're not just sending them out and not talking about it again. Those are some of the basic criteria to receive that designation. So if you are already teaching a class that does some of these things, please consider sending your syllabus to us and we can have it considered for designation. We'd like to get a more accurate count of what we're doing across the university. The process is pretty simple. Again, send your syllabus to this email. We have a faculty advisory committee that will review it, ask you any questions, and then the registrar can add the service component to it. And also that can roll, it will roll forward if you keep teaching it that way. If you just want to try it out, that's okay too. We'll check back in with you and see if you're still doing it. Next, reporting and highlighting. So we want to make sure that we're showing what the university is doing as a whole. So we've put together this academic service learning impact report. So we put something like this together every year that shows what we're doing. We know that this report is vastly underreported. There's so much that faculty is doing across the university that we don't know about, and so we encourage you to tell us what you're doing so that our reporting can better highlight all of the engagement that's happening here and in our campuses across the state. So the impact report is one opportunity. We do annual excellence and civic engagement awards. We're getting ready to award these next week at our service celebration on Thursday. We've received some really phenomenal nominees this year, and so we'll be putting that out next week. We'll know who we have both a faculty engagement award. We also have a service learning instruction award. We also are awarding awards to students, student organizations, and community partners. So more information about that to come. And we have a goal of really producing better reporting. Like I said, we'd really like to know more about what you're doing. We know that we're missing a lot of information. We are looking for that, but please let us know. Email us. Our contact information is on here. I have some forms on our faculty website where you can just put in information about what you're doing so that we can make sure that we are showing, as an engaged university, what is it that we're doing. Next, faculty resources. So here are some things that we have available through our center. We recognize that faculty are already engaged. And so we have resources available whether you have thought you might like to incorporate some service and engagement into your classroom and you've never been sure how to do that, or maybe you've been doing this for decades and you'd like to share some of the best practices that you've discovered, or tell us about some resources that you think that we really need. So let me know. I am available to meet with faculty one-on-one and we can kind of see what would be the most helpful. I can help you look at how you might want to develop a course, and you probably have a lot to teach me about what you found successful in your courses. We also have sample syllabi on our website, so you can find S-designated courses and what those syllabi might look like. And again, as we increase those, we'll have a greater breadth of syllabi to share. We do have an online platform to track student service, so you may have heard of iServe. This is useful for just student volunteerism, but it also has a function for tracking that engaged learning that happens through the classroom. So your students might have very specific things that they're doing, and we can set up like a private venue within that platform so that your students can be tracking their service, and it makes it very easy for you to see what they've been doing, get validation from the community as well. We also have a community partner program, so one of my colleagues manages our community partner program. Her role is to develop relationships and maintain them with organizations in our region and across the state. And so if you're looking for certain types of opportunities for your students, we might have relationships already developed with organizations that would be a good fit for what you're looking to do. We have different forms and evaluations available that you can use and tailor to your own needs. We have a service learning contract. That's a nice form for students to kind of tie in the learning outcomes that you want them to meet along with the goals that the community has for them. And similarly, we have some evaluations that you are available to tweak for your uses. We have resources that you can use for reflection. And then also we have a service learning teaching assistant program. We developed this a couple years ago. We're not going to pretend that getting your students into the community doesn't take a little bit of extra logistical work. So service learning teaching assistants are people that could help with some of this. With a lot of service learning, we want this to be win-win. And so this is an opportunity for a student that ideally has already taken your course. They've got familiarity with the content. They know you. They enroll in an upper level course with us where they learn more about service learning as a pedagogy. They learn about reflection practices. They learn about different resources and community. And then the service component of that course is that they're actually helping you to facilitate the service in your class. So they can be a first point of contact for your students. They can help students figure out how to track hours, how to get better connected with the community partners. So they can do some of that kind of behind the scenes problem solving. This program has been growing each year, and we found that it has really been a great opportunity both for the students that are the teaching assistants. This is a great leadership opportunity for some of our undergraduate students to really explore more in depth how they can get engaged with the community, but it also helps you to engage this type of pedagogy in your classroom without taking on quite so much of the extra logistics. Finally, like I said, I really want to do a little bit more around developing our interdisciplinary communities of practice, having some clinics to share best practices across campus, and having some networking events. And so to kick this off, my Faculty Service Learning Committee is going to help me in hosting a networking event this spring. So on May 1st, anybody that would like to join us, we're going to be at Apothecary at 4 o'clock. Anyone that wants to come out and meet other faculty that do things with the community, so please come join us, meet new people. And I've got some online resources that are available through our slides and my contact information as well. So thank you all for your time.
Are there any questions? Potomac State, did you have any questions?
No questions, sir. Thank you.
Okay, Tech, did you have any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, I did have one question for you.
Yeah.
So are there any higher level credentials that a student could get if they have a certain number of S classes, like a certificate or something like that?
This is something that we are looking into. At this point, no, there is not. There is a President's Volunteer Service Award, and that's more on quantity at this point, and there's a Civic Engagement Award, but that is something that we're looking for, whether it is a certificate, a focus area, so to be continued.
Okay, all right, thanks. Okay, thank you. We get to hear from our two candidates for Faculty Senate Chair-elect. So a little background here. In addition to serving as chair for the 2019 to 2020 academic year, the winning candidate will also serve a 2-year term in the Board of Governors, replacing me starting July 2019. And so voting will be electronic. Ballots will be sent from a Qualtrics account tomorrow. And it'll be open until Tuesday, April 17th at 5 p.m., so a week. You can read this candidate's written statements in Annex 1C. I'll also point out the last two presentations are annexes in your agenda, so you can download them if you're interested. Okay, so at this point, each candidate is going to be given 3 minutes, exactly 3 minutes, to make a brief statement. We don't take any questions. You can maybe ask questions after the meeting if you want. With apologies, we do have to strictly adhere to the right time constraint. So I'll just kind of stand up once your 3 minutes is up. So by random order, we decided that Emily Murphy from Extension is our first speaker. Emily.
Good afternoon. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to tell you a little about myself and why I would represent you well as a faculty chair-elect and then faculty senate chair. I have been a member of the WVU family since 1993 when I came here as a student. Because of the amazing opportunities I was given as an honors exercise physiology student, I chose to stay here for my master's, my doctorate, and now as a faculty member. While I did not grow up in West Virginia, I have chosen to build my home here in West Virginia, and my husband Eric and I are raising our amazing 2 children. I'm currently the obesity prevention specialist for WVU Extension's Family and Community and Development Unit. Prior to taking my current position, I was a research assistant professor in the Department of Pediatrics. When I hear President Gee talk about finding one's purpose, I am proud to say that through my work with great partners and collaborators, I come to work with a purpose each day, and that is to provide West Virginia communities and families opportunities and tools to improve their health. As the former chair and current member of the Faculty Welfare Committee, I have had the honor of working with my colleagues from across campuses on various issues that help make faculty's lives a little easier, but most important, more fulfilling. Our committee promotes positive and effective communication, workplace appreciation, inclusiveness, and transparency at all levels. Because the nature of my current position does not put me in direct contact with students on a daily basis, I purposefully recruit 8 to 10 undergraduate exercise physiology interns each year and teach a portion of an exercise physiology course to keep me connected with students on campus. My work with both Extension as well as Health Science and Technology Academy has made me passionate about the recruitment and retention of students here on campus, with an emphasis on students who are underrepresented. Throughout my career, I've had the unique opportunity to partner with various statewide organizations, including PEIA, on several wellness initiatives. As a member of the Faculty Senate Executive Committee, I've been included this year in discussions regarding current PEIA issues. Working with PEIA to find better ways to address the needs of WVU faculty and staff is a priority of mine. With the needed elimination of Go 365, as Matt mentioned, it is imperative that we do continue to look for ways to promote and expand wellness opportunities on our 3 campuses and throughout the state. In closing, as Faculty Senate Chair, I would utilize the shared governance structure to explore ways to continuously improve the culture of WVU so that employees and students come to work and/or school each day with their purpose in tow. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Okay, so the next speaker is Virginia Kleiss from BNE. Virginia.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon to WVU Tech and to Potomac State. My name is Virginia Kleiss, and I'm the chair of the MIS department and a professor of information systems. And I'm here today running for Senate chair. I have 4 quick points to make for you today. The first thing I wanted to do is talk about my view of WVU. There is a funny term called stolen win if you're a goaltender. And what it means is that your team wins when it's not supposed to win. Why? Because your goaltender stops more shots than anybody else. So if your team sees 50 shots and your goaltender stops 49, and the other team, your team only shoots 25 shots and their goalie stops 21, you win. Well, I think about WVU that way. I think that we, our faculty of Potomac State, our teaching faculty, our administrators, and our staff, every day we're that goalie stopping pucks. We aren't a rich state. We're not a rich institution. We don't have all the toys, but we're still an R1 institution. We are playing against Stanford, Yale, UNC, NYU, Harvard, Duke, and we still are an R1 institution where we have a stolen win. So I think the first point is I'm very proud of WVU, as we all are, and we all participate in that. But how long can we keep doing that? We as faculty are challenged, we're very tired, we work harder with less. We have lower salaries in some area. Our raises are sometimes low, if non-existent. Our health insurance, we hear year after year about PEIA. So lots of decisions are ahead about finite resources. It's my view that we as faculty have a strong responsibility to share in the governance of WVU. Shared governance is the heart of how we work with our senior administration and our staff to carry the institution forward. I have 12 years on the executive committee, 13 years in the 11 on the executive committee and 12 years on the Senate. I've chaired many committees and served on several committees. It's in my statement. So in terms of shared governance, I have a lot of experience with that. So my second point is shared governance really matters. We have not always gotten along with our senior administration the way we do now. There was a period a long time ago when we voted no confidence in a process and no confidence in a president. Lots of the faculty didn't agree with others of the faculty. Oh, okay. And the reason that we all came out as friends in the end is because of Robert's rules. We have to follow a process and it matters. So the formality matters in the Senate. And then my last point is, I think we're facing a lot of disruption and important decisions ahead. So as a Senate chair, I have the experience having sat at the table as we make these decisions. So thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you, Virginia. And please, if you haven't done so already, read the statements from the candidates that were attachments to the agenda. Okay, so next up, for action, announcement of declared candidates and nominations from the floor for faculty representative to Board of Governors. So this is for a 2-year position starting pretty soon, July 2018. And this is the position currently held by Stan Heilman. So this is someone who, although serving as a representative to the entire faculty, the candidate must come from either extension or health sciences. So today we'll announce our declared candidate and take nominations from the floor. But nominations actually don't close today, so it's a little different than what we did with the chair. So according to our Constitution, the nominations remain open until 1 week before the May meeting. So that would mean that we can accept nominations through May 7th. Okay, so we have one announced candidate, and that candidate is Stan Heilman. And next, I would like to call for additional nominations from the floor. So are there additional nominations for this position? Okay. Potomac State, did you have any nominations?
We do not have any nominations, Chair Valenti.
Okay. TAC, do you have any nominations?
No nominations.
Okay. So hearing no further nominations, still open. You can continue to nominate yourself or a colleague through May 7th. If you want to do so, send an email to the Faculty Senate office at facultysenateoffice@mail.wvu.edu by May 7th. Okay, and then the candidate or candidates will have an opportunity to speak before the Senate at the May meeting with a candidate statement sent shortly beforehand and electronic voting immediately afterwards. Okay, thanks. All right, so next up is our curriculum committee report from Ralph Hutzman. And Ralph, in the interest of time, is it okay if we bundle kind of like what we've been doing?
Yes, I was going to suggest that we bundle the 4 approval items into one motion if that's acceptable.
Okay. So we have 4 approval items, which is new courses report, Annex 1, course change, deletion, adaptations, Annex 2, capstone report, Annex 3, and a new major. So are there any objections or points of discussion for any of these items? Potomac State, anything? TAC, anything?
No points of discussion.
Okay. TAC?
No points of discussion.
Okay, in that case, we'll go ahead and call a vote. All those in favor of approving Annexes 1, 2, 3, and the new major, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. The Annexes 1, 2, and 3 and the new major are approved. And then we have 4 information items.
Next, we have 2 for information items. The first, a new minor in business cybersecurity is as written.
Okay. Do you want to bundle these 2 as well? Yeah.
I have one correction to the final one. That'll
Okay,
take like half a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So for the report from the Graduate Council, the Graduate Programs Report, there is an update from what's in the annex. The new major in energy environments in the MS in resource management degree has passed. It's not past pending anymore. So,
Okay, gotcha.
and with that, those are the information items.
Okay. All right, so are there any questions or points of discussion for the new minor or Annex 4? Okay, Potomac State, do you have anything?
No questions or comments, sir.
Okay. TAC, do you have anything?
No questions.
Okay, well, hearing no questions, the new minor and Annex 4 are filed.
Thank you.
Anything else, Ralph?
Nope.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, next up, we have Jeff Committee Report, Natalie St. Corcoran.
I have two for information items, Annex 6 and Annex 7. Annex 6 is a Jeff transition review, and Annex 7 are the honors foundation courses. These courses are special topics classes that are keyed to Jeff areas, specific Jeff areas. And we review the courses every year to ensure that they're in keeping with the Jeff.
Okay, so those honors courses, they're Jeff courses?
They
that
are Jeff
honors?
courses, yes.
Okay, got it. Okay, are any questions or points of discussion for Annexes 6 or 7? Potomac State, you have anything?
No, sir.
Okay, TAC, any questions?
No questions.
Okay, hearing no questions, Annexes 6 and 7 are filed. Next up, we have taco. We don't normally get taco reports. This meeting's running long. I'm getting hungry every time I hear taco.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Today's a spicy day. I wish I could have brought tacos.
We have as an attachment a new charge, right? I'll let Dave explain it.
Yeah, so the Teaching and Assessment Committee is asking to revamp our charge a little bit. The major change is in the second bullet point, if you have the handout. Essentially, as a result of some issues with harmonization and sort of keeping track of courses, trying to pick up some slack, trying to offload some of the work from the GEF and the Curriculum Committee and keep a better eye on coursework in general. We're just asking to change the charge so that we can review ongoing course syllabi.
Okay. So any questions for Dave? And I assume this will entail some increase in workload on the TACO committee, but hopefully it'll be manageable because there'll be some sampling of courses. Okay. Potomac State, any questions for Dave about TACO?
No questions.
Okay. TAC, any questions?
No questions.
Okay, well, hearing no questions or points of discussion, Annex 8 is filed. And next we have a report from Roy, faculty representative to state government.
Roy Nutter, your faculty representative to state government. Three things that from the HEPC meeting on March 23rd. You may have read some of these in the paper, but in case you didn't, Chancellor Hill has announced his retirement as of July 1. Senate Bill 319, the Promise Bill, removed the GED requirement for homeschool students. And then, which means homeschool students don't have to take GED to do Promise. And then there was BS degree approved for WVU Tech in Adventure Management. The other thing, which is probably more important to know, goes back to this proposed model for funding. It is posted on the HEP website if you want to go look at it. But there's some things I noticed that I think you should be aware of. They did a calculation based on 2018 base funding, and WVU, if you do the algorithm, would drop 10%. Potomac State would increase 10%, and WVU Tech would drop 44%. Pay attention. Thank you.
Roy, I have a question then. So is there a public comment period right now for the funding model?
Comment period should be open 30 days from March 23rd, so I didn't calculate it either, but it's probably somewhere another week.
Okay, thanks. Okay, are there any questions for Roy? Potomac State, do you have any questions for Roy?
No questions for Mr. Nutter.
Yeah, Tech, did you have questions for Professor Nutter?
No, thank you.
Okay. And with my apologies, I don't actually have the agenda. I have my notes. Could someone look at the agenda and go back to the Teaching and Assessment Committee report and tell me if that's for approval? Okay. My notes are wrong. Okay. So we're going to go back an item with my apologies. That revised charge needs to be passed by the Senate. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I now have an agenda. Okay, nothing like at the end of the meeting to get one. Okay, so at this point, hopefully everyone's paying attention. We're going to vote, but what we're going to vote on is the revised charge for the Teaching Assessment Committee as presented by Dave Hauser. Okay, so all those in favor, or do we need to, I guess, if anyone has any comments? No, Reiko voting? Okay, all right, you had your chance. Okay, all those in, thanks, okay, long meeting, bear with me. All those in favor of the revised charge for Taco Committee, please say aye. Okay, opposed? Okay, good. Potomac State, how do you vote on the Taco charge?
3 ayes on the taco.
Okay, thank you. Tech, how many of you like the Taco charge as revised?
Tech has 4 ayes.
Okay, thank you. And Dave just had an amendment. He wants to add to the charge that the meetings have to be on Tuesdays? Taco Tuesday, okay. And that you will bring tacos to the meeting, right? Okay. All right, so now, Stan, sorry about that.
Thanks, Matt. So this is an update. The Board of Governors met in a special meeting on March 6th. Again, we went through some of the rules that Matt had mentioned earlier. 4.7, which is a faculty reduction in force rule, as well as some academic rules, including Rule 2.5, which is a Students' Rights and Responsibilities Act. And as Matt mentioned, that comment period has been extended until April 11th. So if you haven't taken a look at those, I'd suggest you do so. We also approved a BS in cybersecurity for the Statler College, Associate of Arts degree in Health Informatics and Information Management at Potomac State, and approved the entrance into an amended agreement related to food services and training table for athletics. Our next meeting will be on the April 20th, and that's going to include presentations from the staff and students, but the presentations by the faculty were moved to the June meeting, so that won't be until June.
Okay, any questions for Stan? Potomac State, any questions for Stan?
No questions, sir.
Okay. TAC, did you have any questions for Stan or Board of Governors?
No questions.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we had another item which was for information, results of the Faculty Senate election, Annex 9. And I'll let you look at that, assuming there's no questions or points of discussion on that. We'll go ahead and file it. New business, is there any new business? Potomac State, did you have any new business?
We have no new business, sir.
Okay, good. And Tech, did you have any new business?
No new business here.
With that, is there a motion to adjourn? Okay, is there a second? Okay, we are hereby adjourned. Thank you.